Boom, thank you very much. Right. What is happening, everybody? 88.4 kilometers to go, and we've got ourselves an incredibly talented breakaway group. 5 Belgians in it. All 5 of them likely selections for any World Championships team. Tim Wellens of UAE Team Emirates, Victor Campenaerts and Wout van Aert for Visma Lease-A-Bike, Arnaud Delis of Lotto, he's got Jared Drisners with him as a teammate. Jasper Stuyven rounds out the Belgian contingent in this move from Lidl Trek. A couple of Australians as well to accompany Jared Drisners. Michael Storer has just bridged from the Peloton to this breakaway group from Tudor Pro Cycling with Caden Groves of Alpecin de Koning there as well, but the group has been splitting up as of late. To round off everybody else in this breakaway, you've got Tadej Pogacar of Bahrain Victorious, Quinn Simmons of Lidl Trek, Pascal Encorn of Soudal Quickstep, Nilson Paulus of EF Education Easy Post, Alexei Lutsenko and Jake Stewart for Israel Premier Tech, Tobias Lund Andersen for Picnic PostNL, Matteo Verche of Total Energy, and a little known rider called Mathieu van der Poel from Alpecin de Koning. Bahrain Victorious are on the radio saying Ale Mate from behind. They're coming Captain America and Storer. So they're calling Quinn Simmons Captain America. And indeed it's Simmons who presses on at the front. Hands over to Victor Campenaerts, but this breakaway group is only 50 seconds away from the Peloton. But the Peloton looks to be slowing up with UAE Team Emirates on the front. Looked like a couple of riders were attacking across, but this race is all over the road at the moment. Right now, you have a leading group of Mohoric, Simmons, Storer, Campenaerts, that is Lutsenko, Delis as well is in there. And the rest of the breakaway group, Delis looking over his shoulder, wondering where they've all gone. Nilson Paulus has got onto the wheel of the Belgian national champion, not Delis, Tim Wellens. I'm thinking Delis because it's the Belgian national champion's kit, and that's former Belgian national champion. But Wellens is across then. Delis isn't, and Nilson Paulus is. So you've got a leading group now of 7 riders up the road. And what a start to this stream. I mean, I'm getting stuff wrong already, and we're not even sort of 5 minutes in. The breakaway looks to have got this dramatically wrong, especially the likes of Alpecin de Koning and Lotto, who have missed this move, despite having 2 riders in the initial breakaway. Israel Premier Tech and Visma Lease-A-Bike look to be playing this one slightly differently, but Caden Groves has come to the front of the chase group with Lund Andersen sat on the wheel of the Australian. And the chase group has got increasingly larger as of late. But no, riders are joining this group hand over fist right now. I thought I saw attacks away from the Peloton. And indeed I did, because Alpecin de Koning have multiple riders now in this move. Caden Groves and Mathieu van der Poel were there. They've now been joined by Xandro Muret. Lidl Trek have added a couple to the breakaway group as well. Voldgren is there for EF Education Easy Post, attacking away from the Peloton after a long breakaway battle that is continuing as it stands. So Voldgren there, Buitrago there, backing up Matej Mohoric as well for Bahrain Victorious, on a stage that is not settled down at all. Carlos Rodriguez, I think I saw in that group for Ineos Grenadiers as well, with Guillaume Martin and Valentin Madoua for Groupama FDJ. Nice and Stuyven are the 2 little Trek riders in there, with Quinn Simmons, of course, up the road for that team. Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe finally have some representation through Lawrence Pithy in this break. And that is Jake Stewart just clinging on to the back of the chasers for Israel Premier Tech. Meanwhile, a third group is trying to manoeuvre themselves up the road. Alaphilippe is in that group, as is Andreas Leknesund, Frank van den Broek there, as well as Ben O'Connor, being dropped right now from that third group on the road. I think was Jared Drisner's. But right now you've got a massive chase group, including the likes of Ivan Romeo of Movistar, who's found his way up there. Warren Barguil, I think, is up there as well. And Jordan Jaeger, actually, a GC rider, has joined up with the group. And they're calling it Group Only, which must mean that Oscar Only's up there. I'll give you a lowdown on what the whole group is, as more and more attacks are going. Rodriguez, Jaeger, Martin, Madouas, Barguil, Berthet, Van der Poel, Buitrago, Stuyven, Van Aert, Leknesund, Valgren, Pithy, Lund Andersen, Groves, Romeo, Nace, Verchet is your second group on the road, chasing Campenaerts, Simmons, Wellens, Paulus Stora, Lutsenko and Mohoric. Up front. Meanwhile, UAE Team Emirates with Sivakov, Soler and Pollitt are controlling the peloton. And alarm bells might be going off for some of the GC riders in the battle for the podium, the likes of Florian Lipovic and Kevin Vauquelin, because Oscar Only has slipped himself into this move. Lipovic on the radio for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, I think he understands the situation now and has just had that radioed through from his sports director. Vingegaard, Sepkus and Matteo Jorgensen are behind. Pogacar sat fourth wheel at the moment with Narvaez in fifth in the peloton. Of course, they've got Tim Wellens up the road, who exchanges a brief word with Alexei Lutsenko. Shake of the head from Lutsenko, so I'm not sure what exactly was put across there. But Campenaerts sticking to the rear of the leading group as Carlos Rodriguez attacks away from the group of Oscar Only. In search of trying to get across, we've already seen Axel Laurence get involved in a chasse patate earlier in the stage for Ineos Grenadiers. Will Carlos Rodriguez be doing the same thing, or is this an inspired move from the former Spanish national champion? Current Spanish national champion, of course, is Ivan Romeo, who is in this move. But more and more riders are joining up with this chase group as time is going on. Christian Rodriguez being one of them for Arkea B&B Hotels, who finally have a rider in that breakaway. Of course, they're thinking about the general classification with Kevin Vauquelin, but it's nice to have a rider up the road, and it's their second highest placed rider overall. Had a good ride on yesterday's stage as well. Victor Campenaerts shone on that day too, and he is in the leading group as it stands. But the peloton only 50 seconds behind the leading group of 7. So 7 at the front, 1 rider, Carlos Rodriguez, trying to chase across, and a 28 rider group behind that. Wellens flicks his elbow, looking for the American national champion Quinn Simmons to ride through. Indeed he does. And Lutsenko sat third wheel in the breakaway group right now. Looking back though, for Lotto is Jared Jerisnes, who has done his job for the day. He's got his sprinter in the move, Arnaud Delis. And I think this breakaway will go with the sheer amount of riders in it. UAE Team Emirates continuing to press on at the front of the peloton, and it is Pavel Sivakov rather than Nils Pollitt who's on the front. Perhaps that says a lot about week 2 form, because Nils Pollitt has grown into this race, whereas Sivakov started the race like a house on fire and has since dropped off slightly. Had a couple of really bad days, but looks to have stemmed the wobble. Either way, being used early on by UAE Team Emirates now. Storer takes over. Will be the freshest, you'd think, in this group after bridging over latest. Nielsen Paulus was one of the earliest attackers in the stage, and his sheer grit and legs have got him in this leading group. Wellens, Campenaerts, Simmons and Lutsenko, as well as Mohoric, sit in this middle ground, I think, of riders who didn't spend all their bickies in the early part, as Jonas Vingegaard gets a bike change from the Visma Lease-A-Bike team car. Shouldn't be too difficult to get back onto the peloton because they are letting the gap rise to the breakaway. With 800 metres remaining of the second climb of the day, Jonas Vingegaard should be able to manoeuvre his way through the convoy and get back to the peloton without much trouble. But Vingegaard has been in trouble in the earlier part of the stage, being caught up behind a crash, including the likes of Florian Lipovic, who hit the deck. Onley also got caught up in the incident, but wasn't down on the deck. But the situation looks to have stabilised. We finally have a large breakaway group, admittedly chasing a smaller breakaway group up front. But there are plenty of teams in this who have missed the 7-rider lead group. As Jonas waves to the camera, supported by Sepp Kuss at the moment. Also there is Emil Verstringer of Alpecin Koenig. Over the top of the third category climb, 2 points given out for the winner of that climb, which was Alexei Lutsenko. Tim Wellens takes 1 more point for his fleeting King of the Mountains jersey hopes. And it's not a day for anybody wanting to be in the polka dot jersey. A maximum of 9 points given out across the stage if you finish first over all 3 of the climbs today. But if you are UAE Team Emirates, you don't really want any GC riders getting up the road, or maybe you do from the lower section, so that other teams try to chase them down. And maybe if you're a sprinter who can get over these hills that isn't already in the breakaway, I'm thinking somebody like Biniam Girmay if he's still here, then this could be your chance to capitalise. There is a large group off the back right now that is going to end up being the Gruppetto. Plenty of riders involved, the likes of the Yates brothers is there. Benoit's there too. Valentin Paris-Pantra. Lenny Martinez in the King of the Mountains jersey was caught up in that crash at the start of the day. He's fallen behind. Elsewhere, other riders behind include Edward Turns, Jordi Meus, Arnaud Demar, lots of the sprinters, Merlier, Milan, among others. But I don't see Biniam Girmay in there. I see a lot of his teammates in there, though, which may indicate to me that he might be in that group. But the likes of Barret, Van Sint Maartensdijk too, and Page and Bright as well. So 4 Intermarché 1-2 riders caught behind in the Gruppetto. UAE Team Emirates summit the 3rd category Côte de Sorez then, as Healy receives a bike change from EF Education Easy Post's team car. The second group on the road is now considered the Gruppo Gega, which must mean that Oscar-Onley has been caught by the Peloton. Either that or has dropped back. But Vandenbroek is attacking on the wheel of Andreas Leknesund and Santiago Buitrago, trying to form a 3-man group to make it across to a leading group of now 8, because Carlos Rodriguez has bridged. I thought for all the world that was going to be a chasse patate. But Rodriguez, good ride from the Ineos Grenadiers GC leader. 22 minutes down in 10th position in the general classification and 57 seconds, so basically 23 minutes. And off the front goes Jordan Gega. In a counter-attack, with a rider from Picnic Postenel involved too. So Gega has got significant gap now on the chasing group. He's been joined by a rider from Ineos Grenadiers. But it's all kicking off, and riders are constantly moving. And this is what makes these breakaway stages the best, I think. Tactically, it is a fantastic and fascinating battle to watch. But let's have a look at the stage ahead of us in a little bit more detail. Here it is, stage 15 of the tour. We started in Muret, and it was a very fast and frantic start. The GC guys that perhaps were thinking that the week was pretty much over somewhat paid the price, because incidents were rife in the early parts of the stage. Riders being caught behind, being in the wrong position at the wrong time. And in the end, the leading group, should I say, went just before the intermediate sprint, where Mathieu van der Poel was allowed to roll over the sprint point in first position. Then we've done the Côte de Saint-Ferréol. That was won for, just for clarity, by Lutsenko ahead of Nielsen Paulus, who took 1 point on the climb. Then it was the Côte de Sorez, won again by Alexei Lutsenko, with Tim Wellens in second place on that particular climb. And then to end off this stage, we have the Pas du Sang, which is a very, very difficult climb. 2.9 kilometers, 10% average gradient, and it is a real killer for any of the pure sprinters that want to make it over this particular climb. Either way, that comes around 50 kilometres before the finish line in Carcassonne. And the road keeps rising to the top of the Col du Font Bruno, not a categorised climb, unlike the Pas du Sang. But once you get to the crest of that, it is downhill and then an 8 kilometre flat section before the finish in Carcassonne. So we could see a small group sprint. We could see, a individual rider make it down the descent alone and hold the rest of the breakaway off. We could see a mass sprint from the whole breakaway. Who knows what will happen? But in the end, it will be played out in a tactical battle amongst all sorts of rider types. And we've got all sorts of rider types in the leading group of 8. Tim Wellens, a classics man, a flat truck, a domestique deluxe for Tadej Pogacar. Victor Campenaerts, you could say the same about Jonas Vingegaard. Neilson Paulus, a hill classics rider who enjoys a grand tour, has been rather off colour at this Tour de France, but this is the first opportunity he's got to get involved and in the thick of the day, and he's taken that with both hands. Matej Mohoric needs no introduction, descending specialist from Slovenia. Bahrain Victorious' leading man for stage victories in the Tour de France, and he does them on these sorts of days, the rolly terrain that suits him the best. Carlos Rodriguez, pure mountain rider. Ineos Grenadiers is general classification leader, 10th overall in the general classification, and a rider not to be messed with in the mountains. This admittedly not his preferred terrain, but does enjoy a day in the break. So does Quinn Simmons, who is ever attacking American national champion on Lidl Trek, and a rider who can pull for days. He has got such a big engine, as did Alexei Lutsenko a couple of years ago. Slightly, again, similar to Neilson Paulus, been off the boil, admittedly for the last couple of years now, but very dangerous when the road goes uphill and gets steep, and has nothing to lose on a team that are yet to win. And finally, Michael Storer of Tudor Pro Cycling already proved himself at Paris-Nice so far this year. Another climber who has free rein at Tudor Pro Cycling. He is their main man for when the road goes uphill, was set up by the likes of Marius Meyerhofer and Julian Alaphilippe, and has bridged to the leading group, and has since ridden a fantastic race, getting in the right move, and in that group of 8 up the road right now. But so many different riders behind. I mean, Wout van Aert and Van der Poel, obviously. Guillaume-Martin Guillaume for the mountains. Thibaut Nace is a very good sprinter, with Arnaud Delis. But yeah, you've got so many different rider types that are after the stage, and you can't really take your eyes off what's going on the road, because every moment there's another slight change and the race gets opened up. Right now on my stream, they are showing a quite impressive dam. But I'll let you know where I am on my stream if you want to sync up watching at home. So yeah, I am at 74.6 kilometers to go. We're 2 hours, 1 minute and 21, 22, 23 seconds into the stage. And I am at 74.3 to go now. So there you are. Leknesund has found himself away on his own in a one-man chase. The 2 other riders he was with were pulled back by the rest of the chasing group. That was Axel Laurence being one of them, and Jordan Jagat the other. But that group is only 40 seconds behind the leading 8. Alekna on his own is 10 seconds ahead, should I say, at 30 seconds down. UAE controlling right now, 2 minutes and 45 seconds behind the leading 8, and I think this is finally edging towards the breakaway's chance at victory. I could have called that at the start of the day, but it looked a bit in the balance early on, especially with all the attacks and counter-attacks going in a dysfunctional group. But this time, it's Tadej Pogacar sending it down the descent of the climb that we're on at the moment, the Côte de Suez. And off he goes. Incredibly capable when the road goes downhill. I'm slightly over the speed limit of 70 kilometres an hour going down the road right now. Quinn Simmons is electing to chase this one down. Admittedly not pedalling, but trying to emulate the positions of Tadej Pogacar and the lines that the Slovenian takes. Round a couple of the corners, and he will be licking his lips at that descent before the final part of the stage. But we've done just over 2 hours in the saddle at the moment, 71.5 kilometres to go. And the breakaway, if it settles and works together, should have this stage in the bag. But as we know, and as we've seen across this stage, the breakaway rarely does settle and work together. On the front of the Peloton at the moment is Pavel Sivakov. Nils Pollitt's at second wheel with Pogacar in third. Narvaez, Jorgensen, Vingegaard and Sepp Kuss follow in. And they've actually got a slight gap on the rest of the group. Danny Van Poppel closing this one down for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, looking over his shoulder to see Primoz Roglic sat a couple of wheels behind him. But the peloton is being strung out under the pace of Pavel Sivakov down this descent. What will the situation be for some of these riders in the breakaway? Obviously, you've got a devilish climb up next, Category 2 label, so 5 points given out over the top. None of these guys will be interested in the King of the Mountains jersey. Some of them will have a teammate involved, the likes of Alexei Lutsenko with Michael Woods looking at the King of the Mountains jersey, and Tadej Pogacar with the King of the Mountains jersey on his team in the form of Lenny Martinez, who took it back from Tadej Pogacar on yesterday's stage. But if I'm the likes of Quinn Simmons and Victor Campenaerts, I will be looking to attack on the flatter section. Same probably for Tadej Pogacar to try and get a little bit of a leeway before the savage percentages begin, and the likes of Rodriguez, Stora, maybe Lutsenko can capitalise. At the rear of the peloton right now, and a very strung out peloton, is Luke Plapp, who we've seen a lot at the back. That's the way he enjoys riding. Not being in and around the drama at the front, but risking being caught up in a crash at the back. And has been a consistent figure at the arrière of a group. Around the switchbacks of the descent. Ugh, I'm yawning, but it's not a stage for that, certainly. I've been entertained by the breakaway battle. And I love a breakaway battle on a stage like this. Nice helicopter views of the scenery of France. A couple of fans getting themselves on TV. I mean, I respect it, but at the same time, like, surely you know the reason that you've gone up there is to get on TV for the tour. But you must want to watch the race at some point, right? Maybe you can see them from there, but I'd rather be on the side of the road. Either way, preferences are preferences. And at the moment, I think Alpecin-Deceuninck would prefer this breakaway leading group, at least, to be caught, because we've seen Mathieu van der Poel put the hammer down very hard as Frank van den Broek looks behind and gives a massive G up to the rest of the chasing group. The likes of Wout van Aert won't take that opportunity. Neither will Santiago Buitrago, or any riders for that matter, including the little track duo with a teammate up the road. But there is frustration starting to form. But the teams that have missed this 8-rider breakaway and are not Andreas Leknesund in a bit of a chasse patate, with multiple riders in this group, will need to work together. I'm thinking Guillaume Martin and Valentin Madouas for Groupama FDJ, Groves, Mercer and Van der Poel for Alpecin-Deceuninck, Gégat and Verchet for Total Energy, Bargy, Lund Andersen and Van den Broek for Picnic Post NL, and Pythian Vlasov for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe, need to work together to formulate some sort of order and make sure that they are in with a chance for the stage win, because everybody in this move is down for the stage. Perhaps other than Jordan Gégat, who is 24 minutes and 18 seconds down in the general classification. But I think even Carlos Rodriguez fancies himself on this particular stage, especially with the gaps as they are in the general classification. And the gaps in particular look a little bit like this. Tadej Pogacar leads the way after his second place on the previous stage. Jonas Vingegaard was third behind Timo Arendsman and Pogacar, and is now 4 minutes and 13 seconds behind the Slovenian overall, increasing his lead Pogacar by another couple of seconds. Florian Lipovic retains his third position and increases his gap to Oscar Onley, sat in fourth. Lipovic at 7:53, Onley at 9:18. Vorkelan at 10 minutes and 21 seconds just about stays in the top 5, but he's got to be wary of Primoz Roglic because the Slovenian is only 13 seconds behind Vorkelan. The man in form, though, at the moment for the podium is Felix Gall. He's 12 minutes down on Tadej Pogacar and just over 4 minutes down on Florian Lipovic, but he looks to be the rider in the best form at the moment based on his performance in the previous mountain stage, finishing 4th yesterday, of course, with Tobias Johaland Johannesson 33 seconds behind Gall. Ben Healy and Carlos Rodriguez move into the top 10 because there is a glaring omission. Healy on 18 minutes and 41 seconds down in 9th, and Rodriguez rounding out the top 10 just under 23 minutes down on Tadej Pogacar. And the notable omission in there sits in the middle here on the withdrawal list, because Remco Evenepoel, the white jersey and the man in third in the general classification, had to step off the bike early on in yesterday's stage up the climb of the Tourmalet. On the early slopes he was dropped and he had to can it and get in the car, ending his Tour de France. and we will get to quotes about that later on in the stage, but multiple other riders withdrew on this particular stage, and you could make a very good squad out of these 4 guys. Stef Kras and Matthias Skjelmose did not finishers from the previous stage, Skjelmose getting caught up in a crash on a bit of central reservation, similar to that in Paris-Nice, and Stef Kras had to get off his bike in tears, going to a different team next year and freeing himself from Total Energy, but has been a great servant to the French Pro Continental team, has the Belgian climber. And another Belgian climber did not start today's stage. Lennart van Eetvelt was suffering since a crash in stage 2, and seemingly that has flared up as the tour has gone on, because he has quit just before the rest day, so has clearly had enough of riding on with the injuries that he's picked up. But those are the 4 notable withdrawals. We had Brian Coquard not start the previous stage with a broken finger, but those are the 4 that you need to update you on. So that's where all those guys are. And meanwhile, the minor classifications also changed. Jonathan Milan retains the green jersey, but Tadej Pogacar pulls ever closer. Mathieu van der Poel, taking intermediate sprint points on yesterday's stage, shifts himself up to 3rd and just over 60 points behind Jonathan Milan entering the day. He's now closed that to 41 by crossing the intermediate sprint in 1st position. He's not quite usurped Tadej Pogacar in 2nd place, but might be able to do that at the end of the stage if his teammates pull this gap back. Pogacar also is sat 2nd in the King of the Mountains classification that Lenny Martinez retook the lead of on yesterday's stage, picking up plenty of points over the climbs and ending on 60 points, 8 points ahead of Pogacar, and 48 with Arensman in 3rd. That is 12 points behind Lenny Martinez. In the white jersey, Florian Lipovitz leads that and takes further control of it, as Onley is in 2nd on 1 minute 25 and Vauquelin 3rd on 2:28 for Arkea B&B Hotels, summarising 3rd, 4th and 5th in the general classification. So we've got a breakaway from the breakaway that are trying to get across to Andreas Leknesund right now. It consists of Pascal Encorn of Soudal Quickstep, Thibaut Nace of Lidl Trek, and Valentin Madouas of Groupama FDJ, with the man who was remonstrating with the rest of the breakaway that they should work with him. Frank Vandenbroek has had enough and attacked away from the breakaway group. But Nace has been incredibly quiet across this tour. Valentin Madouas, of course, has his teammate in the chasing group, Guillaume Martin, and Pascal Encorn is on his own for Soudal Quickstep. After Remco Evenepoel's abandon, that may have opened up some opportunities for him to go for stage wins. Of course, a key rider as well in Tim Merlier's lead-out train. But Merlier prefers to rely on Bert van Lerberger, so Encorn is given the opportunity to let go and give it a try today. .5 kilometres to go. Leknesund just under 10 seconds away from this group. So the Norwegian could make a massive bridge after a sustained effort. But he'll have got to his point that he wanted to get to if he can close those 8 seconds. Meanwhile, the group of Jordan Gega is 26 seconds behind and are trying their best to pull in a 4-man chasing group. But constantly you've got riders now getting agitated, and I think when Encorn, Nace, Madouas and Vandenbroek are pulled in, you will get fresh attacks coming from elsewhere. And still, the Peloton are only 3 minutes and 8 seconds down as Andreas Leknesund makes it over, the Norwegian national champion, doing the flag proud by getting to the leading group of 8. So it swells to 9 now. And Leknesund may need to miss a couple of turns at the front of the race after the effort that he's put in to get across. And Leknesund, another different rider type in this breakaway, a rangy climber who can also time trial. A little bit of an all-rounder, former pink jersey as well on the Giro d'Italia for what was Team DSM back then. Since moved to his home team, Uno X Mobility. But Eekhoorn, Nace, Madouat and Vandenbroek, we've finally got a time gap for them, and it's 17 seconds, which is 12 seconds and closing ahead of the chasing group. But I think this all could come back together if riders work with one another. If it gets dysfunctional, though, the group of 9 will have it in their hands again. Despite the efforts that all 9 of them have made to get into the lead, it might just pay off for them. Warren Barguil and Ben O'Connor look to have bridged to that second group. It's nice that they're showing us the land art, but kind of need to be updated on the race situation right now. And Mohoric kicks on at the front of the race, trying to get a draft from the motorbike and weaving across the road, but Alexei Lutsenko sticks to the wheel. And in the end, Mohoric packs it in. The breakaway doesn't drop anybody. And counter-attacks go. This looks like Alexander Vlasov with Warren Barguil in his wheel. So I wonder whether they've caught the Eekhoorn, Nace, Madouat, O'Connor, Vandenbroek group. Either way, Vlasov and Barguil are now your second group on the road, with the group of Jegat third. But Quinn Simmons looks over his right shoulder multiple times, and this leading group is starting to lose its cooperation. Nielsen Paulus hasn't taken a turn for I don't know how long. Leknesund hasn't taken a turn, fairly obviously, since bridging across, as we're about to get some team radio from Tudor Pro Cycling team. Probably signalled at Michael Storer, saying, focus, because today is the best day for you guys. We have a big opportunity to win the stage. And they are doing just that at the moment. They used the whole team to get Michael Storer in the breakaway. Julian Alaphilippe, who hit the deck at the start of the day, and Marius Meyerhofer to set up the Australian. Marco Haller, of course, as well, did a decent job to pull the breakaway to within a closable distance. But this would have been a good stage, I think, for Marius Meyerhofer. Michael Storer will need to attack from afar because he's not got the sprint to beat the likes of Mohoric, Paulus, Tim Wellens, etc. on this flat section and the flat finish. But this is probably one of the biggest opportunities for the breakaway to win a stage, which is why so many riders have been eager to get into the moves. And going back into the mountains in the third week, it means that other rider types will be allowed to get their chance today. And the likes of Quinn Simmons and Matej Mohoric have taken that chance with both hands. Victor Campenaerts too, as Alexei Lutsenko has a brief argument with one of his compadres in the breakaway, but more riders are attacking off of the Jaeger group, which doesn't look to be working well together, but is keeping the gap because the lead of the race isn't working well together either. Barguil and Vlasov are continuing on, but Total Energy have forced the rider away from this group. Lidl Trek and Groupama FDJ also represented in that second chasing group. As Vlasov and Barguil fly past. If it's anything like the previous couple of breakaways, it will be Jaeger, Nace and Madouas, because they've been the most active earlier in the stage. But the head of the race now riding side by side. Cooperation is very little in this leading group. Lutsenko and Stora pouring water over themselves, trying to keep themselves cool on what is a hot day, heading towards Carcassonne. And Carcassonne, the Finnish town for plenty of breakaway stages. The likes of Magnus Court, I'm thinking of, a couple of years ago, for EF Education Easy Post. But Vlasov and Warren Barguil are flying across this gap, and it will be 11 riders very shortly. The more riders that get across, the more dysfunctional it will become at the front, but the more likely they are to win because fewer riders are there to pull teammates across in the group, including Van Aert and Van der Poel. And there's an attack. Mohoric makes his second move. Michael Stora straight onto the wheel. Carlos Rodriguez there too. Andreas Leknesund has to close to Carlos Rodriguez to try and ensure that he stays in with the shouts. Rodriguez with the counter-attack. Stora again reacts to the move immediately. And at the moment, indeed, it is Jordan Jaeger in the break, trying to chase across. Obviously, those attacks aren't going to do Jaeger, Madouas and Thibaut Nace any good, because that will increase the pace at the front with these 11 riders. But Jaeger, Nace and Madouas are trying to bridge across as we begin the Pas du Sang, 2.9 kilometres, 10.2% average gradient. Luke Plapp gets a bike change from the Jacob Alula team car and will resume to his position at the rear of the peloton that he has controlled for this whole tour. Now Michael Stora goes on his own. We've seen him follow a couple of moves. This time it's Quinn Simmons following him, and he's got a gap to Victor Campenaerts, who's trying to pace this one down at his own tempo in third on the road. Fellow Belgian Tim Wellens is behind him, with Alexei Lutsenko following in. Rodriguez is continuing to keep up with it as well. But on the foot of the climb, Michael Stora has gone for it. Quinn Simmons and Stora have been in a 2-up breakaway before. They could not catch Ben Healy on stage 10. And in the end, Simmons robbed Stora of the second place by sprinting past him on gradients similar to this. So although Stora might be the lighter rider, Quinn Simmons has very good punch. It's whether Simmons can keep it up for the remaining 2.5 kilometres of the Pas du Sang climb. Stora and Simmons then, and it's the Australian pacing at the front, looking behind himself, wanting a turn from the American national champion. But Victor Campenaerts is dropping the rest of the breakaway one by one. Tim Wellens fighting to stay on the wheel of the Visma Lease-A-Bike man, who has been on great climbing form in the past couple of days. It's Campenaerts and Wellens. Lutsenko looked like he tried to follow the two Belgians, but in the end did not have it and has dropped back to the rest of the breakaway group, which is ever fracturing up the Pas du Sang climb. At the moment, Carlos Rodriguez and Alexander Vlasov are the only ones to keep up with Lutsenko, so it's 2 riders, 3 riders in the front 3 groups at the moment. And indeed, Mohoric has pulled the pin. He's tried his offensive manoeuvres on the flats, which he had to do. And when the road's gone uphill, he has gone pop and has been caught by the likes of Madouin, Nace and Jega in the furthest chase group back before we reach the rest of the favourites. But right now, there's no camera on them because seemingly the stage win is going up the road. And in pole position at the moment is Michael Storer, Quinn Simmons, Victor Campenaerts and Tim Wellens. Campenaerts doing an incredible ride to bring back Storer and Simmons. But right now it's Visma Lease-A-Bike against UAE Team Emirates on a different level. Thibaut Nace tries to push on, but the gap just keeps going out. They've caught Andreas Leknesund, who spent so much energy trying to get across and was only in the leading group for a couple of kilometres. And Leknesund pedalling squares right now in his Norwegian national champions jersey, being distanced ever so slightly from that chasing trio of Jega, Nace and Madouin. Meanwhile, UAE Team Emirates continue to control in a peloton that has slightly swelled. They've just started the Pas du Son climb, 10.2% average of course for nearly 3 kilometres, and it's a very consistent percentage that Victor Campenaerts right now is shredding. Tim Wellens sat 4th wheel, but Campenaerts leads the way. Simmons on his wheel, Storer then behind Quinn Simmons. Meanwhile, Luke Plapp has made it back onto the rear of the peloton and is with a teammate that could guide him up towards the front, but I think Plapp prefers to be at the back. He's got Elmar Reinders with him. Meanwhile, Jared Drisner's trying to hang on, of course, a member of the original breakaway. And a lot of that original breakaway are seemingly going to leave here empty-handed unless they can pull themselves together very quickly. And the Pas du Son might give them a perfect launch pad to do it, but with 1 kilometre remaining for the leading group, it will take a massive effort to try and get across to one of the chasing sets of riders on the road. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in 1s and 2s at this point. But right now, 4 riders look most likely to go on and take the stage win. Wellens looks over his shoulder, assesses the damage, and will be happy with the work that Victor Campenaerts is doing at the moment. Simmons and Storer, the strongest initial attackers, Storer especially, monitoring many moves by Matej Mohoric. That's a tongue twister. But Nace starting to drop Valentin Madouin and Jordan Jega. Andreas Leknesund coming back to this group indicates that the pace has slowed ever so slightly. And there goes Storer. Storer hits the attack button again. And Victor Campenaerts says, "Go ahead, I am pacing the climb at my own tempo right now." Quinn Simmons rolling and rocking on the bike to make sure that he stays with Voxnor. Meanwhile, the Belgian national champion Tim Wellens stays seated, unlike Simmons, but looks like he's struggling as well. Campenaerts looks over his shoulder, perhaps wanting a turn from Quinn Simmons. In the end, he's not going to get one. But he's got 550 metres as Victor Campenaerts left of this climb. Nielsen Paulus and Warren Barguil are trying their best to get across to Lutsenko, Vlasov and Carlos Rodriguez, but I'm not putting in time to those three at the moment. So your third group on the road now is Rodriguez, Vlasov and Lutsenko, with Barguil and Paulus in fourth on the road. Quinn Simmons now attacks the second group in pursuit of Michael Storer, who's gritting his teeth and going for the top of the Pas du Son climb. This is where he needs to make the impact though. The best climber, you'd think, of the leading four, but also the worst sprinter as well. Victor Campenaerts, I don't think has it either, but we've seen him win Tour de France stages from a reduced group. Michael Storer, on the other hand, is more of a pure climber and has to make his move when the terrain goes up. And he's done just that right now. Quinn Simmons following in, and again Victor Campenaerts just setting his own tempo, reeling in the American, who is in turn reeling in the Tudor rider. Storer's going to go over the top of the climb in first. He's going to take King of the Mountains points, but he's not interested in that whatsoever. He continues to press on because he wants the stage win. But if Quinn Simmons gets on his wheel, that makes it infinitely more difficult for Michael Storer. Lutsenko, on the other hand, is suffering. He's been dropped by Alexander Vlasov and Carlos Rodriguez. And both of those guys are watching the stage win go up the road as it stands. 36 seconds behind the leaders. They've crested the Pas du Son climb. But right now, riders are in ones and twos. Meanwhile, we've got a leading group of four. And the calibre of rider up front indicates to me that it's going to be Wellens, Campenaerts, Simmons and Storer that will fight it out for victory. Because Campenaerts has brought Storer and Simmons back. Storer tries going on another attack as Quinn Simmons looks to usher riders through. Bold from Simmons to ask of that, since he's been sitting on Victor Campenaerts' wheel for the whole climb. Meanwhile, Tim Wellens looks for some assistance from the neutral service motorbike. Grabs a bottle, puts it in his bottle cage. But Campenaerts looks across and goes, "What did you chat at me for?" Because Campenaerts has done his fair share of the work. Tim Wellens, not so much. As he goes to the front. But Quinn Simmons is letting the wheel go here. You can't say to work together and then do that. But the Peloton continues to press on. And in the end, they're going to probably cross the line now that the Pas du Son is done altogether. Meanwhile, Storer goes again. Victor Campenaerts follows, bobbing his aero helmet on his head. Tim Wellens continuing to sit fourth. And Campenaerts heads to the front of the group again. We've seen him win from a breakaway before, in his final year at Lotto Destiny at the time, in a very emotional win. And now Simmons goes on a counter move. It is completely dysfunctional in this leading group. And that might play into the hands of Rodriguez and Vlasov, who look to be working together okay in the second group, but the moment they get up here, they will realise it's dysfunctional and try to profit off that. And of course, Vlasov and Rodriguez are better when the road goes uphill and wouldn't count themselves, I think, in a flat sprint against the likes of Wellens and Simmons. But Wellens right now, not pulling a turn whatsoever. I can understand the anger from Simmons if it's levelled at Tim Wellens. But Storer pulls through right now and is getting increasingly agitated. Bardi and Paulus continuing to press on. They'll have the word from the director sportif in their ear about the fact that the breakaway group are struggling to cooperate well with each other. Nielsen Paulus has got a sprint on him as well. Bardi less so, but would fancy his chances at any point in a small group. We've seen him win sprints from GC groups in the past, most notably in the King of the Mountains jersey in 2017. Vlasov, Rodriguez and Lutsenko, who has joined up with the pair again, will start to believe, I think. Lutsenko, the largest figure of the three. Vlasov, good puncher on his day, but perhaps doesn't have it in a flat sprint. Carlos Rodriguez, I think, will be the most difficult of the three to win a sprint, or will find it the most difficult of the three. But Lutsenko swapping Kazakhstan for Israel, switching from Astana to Israel Premier Tech, and is yet to find the big results in the colours of Israel Premier Tech. This is the best chance he's got at taking a big win for that team. Meanwhile, Harry Sweeney having a rear wheel changed. And over the top of the climb goes UAE Team Emirates at the head of the Peloton. They are not going to be able to bring this back. They're 6 minutes down on the leading quartet. So I think all of the GC favourites will ride this one in, which was relatively expected heading into the day. As trying their best to hang on to the rear of the Peloton is Jared Drisners. Also towards the back, Mathis Louvel, a rider who has done nothing in my Velo Games fantasy team across this Tour de France. And alongside him is Maximilian Schachmann, who will be given his own opportunities later on in this Tour de France. Perhaps this could have been a stage for him. We've seen him win reduced bunch sprints this year, and we've seen him win a stage at Zulia Basque Country and get involved in sprints on those stages too. Bardi now trying to get across to the group of Carlos Rodriguez. Has Bardi dropped Paulus, or has Paulus dropped Bardi? But Bardi has dropped Paulus then. So the Frenchman not happy with the pace of the EF rider. And he heads on a quest that he has now completed to get to Rodriguez, Vlasov and Lutsenko, who sit 21 seconds behind the leading group, who seem to have found themselves taking turns again after their brief fallout. 48.4 kilometres to go, and this race still firmly hangs in the balance. Let's have a look at what people have been saying then ahead of the stage, and most importantly, Eike Wiesbeek, who gave a brief interview to Eurosport before the stage began, and he summed up the route quite nicely. We have various scenarios, said Wiesbeek. What's tricky now is you have the GC situation. It's a hard stage to control, especially in the first part. There are some kickers, and there's also some wind. The two hills in the middle of the stage are hard. It's a 50-50 chance for Biniam Diomaye. You need a bit of a controlled stage from the GC guys to have him survive the big climbs. We don't have it totally in our hands, but it's a chance now for Biniam. We had Louis Barret and Georg Zimmermann. Now we have Louis Barret that can pass the mountains with Biniam. He'll be important for today, but if it gets uncontrollable, Louis will find himself in the break and not Biniam. So we'll have to see how it plays out. We're going to force a situation. Either Biniam is in the break, or hopefully there's a GC rider in the break and it gets controlled. It's a hard one to control, but the weather conditions are good. It's a semi-hard stage. And at the end of all of that, Intermarché Wanty have not got a single rider in this breakaway. They were hoping, I think, for the Peloton to control it after Onley had a brief escapade. And Carlos Rodriguez also was up the road in the top 10 of the general classification. But that reaction did not come from the Peloton, so Intermarché will not be winning today's stage, barring incident or accident. It will go to one of these four riders: Wellens, Campenaerts, Simmons and Storer. But what about yesterday? Yesterday was a very interesting stage to watch tactically. Not necessarily delivering in terms of explosive attacks from the GC favourites. Because in the end, up to Super Bagnaia, Tiemann Arendsman took the stage win from the breakaway. Yet another breakaway win at this tour. And it might be followed up again on this stage. But Tiemann Arendsman, after the stage, had this to say: I can't believe it. I felt sick after the Giro d'Italia this year, and I think still after being sick, I had a good preparation. Going to my first tour, I wanted to experience everything. I had to be really patient for the first week because it was all pretty punchy, and I had to wait for the mountains. Then the first opportunity I got, I was second on the Mont d'Or stage. That was already an amazing experience in my first tour, but this is unbelievable, no? Also, the way I did today with Carlos Rodriguez in that group, he was also super strong. He had a really good job for me, but I think I just had amazing legs and the shape of my life. I heard the gap with the GC group on the Col de Peyresourde. With Tadej Pogacar and Jonas Vingegaard, 3.5 minutes was probably not enough. I had to move. Maybe it's suicide, maybe it's not. I can't believe that I held them off. I was really fading in the second half of the climb, but I think all of the spectators gave me the extra few watts that I needed, and I could just hold them off. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. I just wanted to experience the Tour de France, the biggest race in the world. I did a lot of Giros and Vueltas with really good GC results. I even won a stage at the Vuelta a España. A lot of times I was close in the Giro d'Italia, but I wanted to experience the biggest race in the world. Then, to win a stage in my first tour in this way is unbelievable. It's crazy. There's always an opportunity, you just have to create it. If you just stay with Tadej, you're not going to win. So we tried to create the opportunity on the Col du Tourmalet. And he's right, you know. We had a super situation with Carlos and me up the road. I told the guys before we left the bus, if Carlos and I had 4 minutes before the last climb, we'd make it if Tadej goes full. On the Col de Peyresourde, I heard the time gap was 3 minutes, so I figured I had to move. I have to use the legs I had. I wasn't sure it'd be enough, but it was, so I'm super happy. Meanwhile, Geraint Thomas, with a little bit more frank of an interview on his Ineos Grenadiers teammate, saying, like everyone, Tiemann Arendsman works really hard and deserves it. He's had some ups and downs, but it's great for him and the team, because we've been trying every day. It was a super ride from him, so I'm super happy. UAE Team Emirates didn't give the break much time. Nils Pollitt was controlling well, but whatever happened, happened. I'm happy that Tiemann got the win. It'll relieve a bit of pressure. We've all been there and it hasn't clicked, but we've been trying all the time, so it's great to finally get the win. I don't think I'll be riding much here in the Pyrenees. On holiday maybe, with a few beers and a pool and a barbecue, but not on the bike. I'm not doing 5,000 metres of climbing anyway. And that is the frankness that Geraint Thomas gives us. After most stages, Uno X and EF Education Easy Post are riding at the front of the bunch, because Carlos Rodriguez is in this breakaway, and they are interested in protecting the top 10s of Ben Healy and Tobias Harlan Johannesson So Johannesson and Healy have sent the troops forward, and with the breakaway looking like they're taking the stage win, it's now a case of trying to bridge back that gap as much as they possibly can. With a downhill to the line, of course, it favours the breakaway. But Intermarché have eventually got what they wanted, admittedly far too late on in the stage. But with Paulus out of contention in the breakaway, EF see this as their only job for today, to make sure that Ben Healy retains his top 10 position. Of course, somewhere between the Peloton and the breakaway group is Jordan Jaeger. We've not had a camera on that group for I don't know how long. But all three Alpecin riders in that group, Muret, Groves and Van der Poel, have missed it. And now we finally have a group, a camera on a group. It is Van der Poel, it is Lund Andersen, and it is Jake Stewart, who are 5 minutes down on Wellens, Campenaerts, Simmons and Storer. And I think Mathieu Van der Poel is going to struggle to try and win this stage. He may catch Paulus, who is on his own and struggling, now a minute down on the breakaway group, but Rodriguez, Vlasov, Bargy and Lutsenko are about to double the size of the breakaway. But if Van der Poel can collect some points at the end of this stage, he keeps positioning himself so that he is going to be in green jersey contention. Alexei Lutsenko making the final push to the breakaway group, and Bridges with Alexander Vlasov on his wheel, Carlos Rodriguez and Warren Barguil now up there. So it was an inspired move from Barguil to attack Nielsen Paulus, despite them seemingly working well together, because Paulus just doesn't have it today. And Barguil for Picnic Postenel is going to get some UCI points that the team especially need. Meanwhile, Tim Wellens from the back of the group, instantly, as soon as the catch is made, says, I'm not going with this, and attacks from the rear. Warren Barguil is trying his best to follow out of the saddle with Quinn Simmons tucked in behind the Frenchman. Paulus has pulled the pin on the day, and they are now calling it the group of Jordan Jaeger, because Jegat, Leknesund and Nace have caught up with Nielsen Paulus right now. And Van der Poel has been dropped from a group of Van Aert of 11 riders, but Wellens is trying to ensure that he has a gap before the descent begins. Has ridden on the back of the leading group for most of the day, but that has helped him out. He's saved energy that others haven't, and has been plotting that move, I reckon, for a long, long time. Pushing the maximum amount of watts he can before he reaches the top of the final climb. No King of the Mountains points for Wellens. This is all in for the stage victory, and he has thinned the breakaway group out once more. Quinn Simmons, Victor Campenaerts, Alexander Vlasov and Warren Barguil are trying their best to follow this move and bridge over to the Belgian national champion, who is going at it alone. Campenaerts and Simmons both have a little bit of motivation after seeing what Tim Wellens was doing in their group. But Campenaerts is starting to struggle. Michael Storer, meanwhile, is going at it alone at his own pace and has passed Warren Barguil on the road, who has been distanced from this now group of 3. Simmons, Vlasov and Campenaerts chasing Tim Wellens, who has attacked for the stage victory. Tim Wellens, of course, with a glittering palmares for UAE Team Emirates. And before that, while he was on a Lotto, 4 wins of the Renui / Bink Bank / Benelux Tour, winner at the Tour de Pologne, 2 stages at the Giro and the Vuelta, but is yet to win a Tour de France stage and can complete the hat-trick today if he takes stage honours. And Wellens has broken the elastic. He'll begin his downhill with a 10-second advantage on Vlasov, Simmons and Stora, with Campenaerts there as well. But it's a strong group behind. Admittedly though, Simmons and Stora especially have been irate with the lack of cooperation. But Wellens is off on his own and is solely thinking about the line in Carcassonne that he needs to cross in first position to claim the hat-trick of Grand Tour stages. Vuelta a España stage winner twice in 2020, Giro d'Italia stage winner in 2018 and 2016, and it's been 5 years since his last victory at a Grand Tour. He's got 40 kilometres, just over that, to hold out. So it's a big effort, but he is relying on Group 2 dynamics ensuing. Riders missing turns, general dysfunction in the breakaway behind him. Carlos Rodriguez is struggling though, sat alone, well behind Michael Stora and Warren Barguil, who are looking to recover their race and get back to the Campenaerts, Simmons and Vlasov group, which don't look like they're working too brilliantly together because the gap was 10 seconds over the top of the climb, and after a brief descent period, Tim Wellens has pulled out 8 seconds. But the 2 Pura climbers are getting back to Campenaerts, Vlasov and Simmons. The catch will be made very shortly. As Victor Campenaerts is struggling off the back of Simmons and Vlasov's pace, who are looking to kick on. But Stora and Barguil will catch Campenaerts first, and then there's about 2 bike lengths between Victor Campenaerts and Alexander Vlasov, who takes over from Quinn Simmons. But we've seen Campenaerts play these games before in the breakaway, acting as if he's completely cooked, and then unleashing a sprint that we never knew he had to take the stage win at last year's Tour de France. In that case, he was in a 3-man group of Michał Kwiatkowski and Matteo Verchet, so had much better odds of winning the stage in a 3-man group. But on stage 18, from that trio, was the quickest to the line. On a flat finish too, after a descent, similar stage profile to what we are seeing today, where there were multiple difficult climbs, and in the end a flat finish. But Jake Stewart and Mathieu van der Poel, as well as Tobias Lund Andersen, have been reeled in by the Peloton. So, Van der Poel takes 20 points at the intermediate sprint, but cannot hold it on to the line. EF Education Easy Post on the radio say we want to go and start to pull to bring the gap down and come closer. Obviously, don't go and catch Michael and Nielsen. So they don't want to catch Valgren and Paulus, who are up the road. Kind of forgot that Michael Valgren was in the breakaway. But I think they might as well catch Paulus and Valgren at this point, because they're not racing for stage victory. Stage honours are going up the road right now. Whether that be with the chasing group or whether that be with Tim Wellens, I think it's moving in favour of the Belgian national champion. 27 seconds now ahead of the 5-man chase. And a 5-rider chase that are not putting in equal effort at the moment. Victor Campenaerts losing the wheel at the back as we begin the descent of the Pas du Son. But after that descent, you've got 7 kilometres of flat approach to the finish line in Carcassonne. Wellens will have the ability to keep a consistent pace, which the breakaway group, the rest of the breakaway, cannot. But if they do catch, Tim Wellens will be cooked. And that gives the 6-rider chase the chance to try and go for stage honours. Either way, Wellens is away at the front. Other riders in this group, though, behind are at the elite level for a reason and are turning up to this Tour de France, not just to be a part of the furniture. Alexander Vlasov being one of them, the 29-year-old from Russia, winner of the Tour de Romandie and has had multiple top 5s at Grand Tours, including 5th at the Tour de France in 2022. As we get a replay of the Tim Wellens attack. Absolutely textbook move, attacking from the rear of the peloton and catching everybody by surprise. Best GC result for Vlasov was 4th at the Vuelta a España in 2021. But has been good in the 1-week stage races as well. I mentioned Romandie in 2022, Paris-Nice in 2021 as well. And winner of the mountain classification at the Tour de Suisse, the race that is a important tune-up for many riders ahead of the Tour de France. But Vlasov has a glittering CV. Meanwhile, Quinn Simmons has a growing one for Little Trek. The American national champion, of course, one of his biggest wins of his career. 2-time American champion, obviously this year, but 2023 as well. Won the Tour de Wallonie in 2021, and that is no mean feat at all, and has taken stage wins at the Tour de Suisse and the Volta a Catalunya this year, after a brief dry period. But Simmons, a rider who will get bigger results later on, only 24 of course, from Lidl Trek. Victor Campenaerts, we've gone through his Tour de France stage win, but he is also a winner at the Giro d'Italia, also in a 2-up sprint on a incredibly funny stage with Oscar Risbait, one of the finest sprints I've ever seen in cycling, in that both of them clearly could not put down any watts whatsoever, so it was whoever was the least bad. But European time trial champion, back when he was a time trialist, and it was less of an all-rounder than he is now in 2017 and 2018, won that 2 years in a row. And a big victor at, excuse the pun, at Belgian races, Droevenkeurs, the Tour of Leuven, and a winner at the Baloise of Belgium Tour in 2019 of a stage as well. But Campenaerts, a rider whose ability is better than the results on paper. Michael Storer, though, has picked up some big on-paper results earlier this season, most notably at the Tour of the Alps and at Paris-Nice, where he won Stage 7, the big mountain stage, to put himself up to 4th in the general classification, lost a position at the end to Magnus Sheffield, the eventual stage winner of Stage 8, but has also won Stage 2 of the Tour of the Alps on his way to winning the overall classification. Has already raced the Giro d'Italia this year where he's finished 10th and has been 3rd, of course, on that 6th stage of the Tour behind Quinn Simmons. So Storer having a very good year, but I think nothing can match the 2 stage wins that he got at the Vuelta a España in 2021, as well as the King of the Mountains jersey. But maybe a Tour de France stage win could just beat that. Another rider who is familiar with the King of the Mountains competition is Warren Barguil. In the latter stages of his career, 33 years of age on Picnic-Postenel, but has, again, a glittering CV, 4 Grand Tour stage victories, 2 at the Tour de France, 2 at the Vuelta a España, both of his Tour de France stage wins coming in 2017, and both of his Vuelta stage wins, incidentally, coming in 2013. Gone fairly winless since 2017, only winning 3 stages, one of which was a team time trial at the Tour of Denmark, and that was his last victory in 2024. Usually now he's used as a teammate for Picnic-Postenel, but does have a chance to get his own results on occasion, most notably 9th at the Forndrom Classic earlier this year and 10th at the Eschborn-Frankfurt race in Germany. So by no means a mug when it comes to sprinting on flat terrain. And might be a rider to watch if it comes back together. But right now, it does not look that way at all. It's heading towards a minute. Advantage Tim Wellens in the Belgian national champions jersey, who hasn't really had the opportunities to go for his own results this year. Been given a little bit of freedom by getting the King of the Mountains jersey earlier on, as they're replaying a bit of radio from UAE Team Emirates right now, saying, from Tadej, saying, how is he looking? How does Tim look? Now you should reply, he looks fabulous. To which the team car doesn't say anything. For Barguil and the rest of the group at 55 seconds, and indeed Tim Wellens does look fabulous, and the legs he's got at the moment are reminiscent of his Belgian National Championships road race win that he took ahead of Remco Evenepoel, soloing to the finish line there. But he has had chances to go for his own results. Strade Bianche, of course, he set up Pogacar for the win, but took 3rd in that particular classic. And then Wellens went and took 8th position at the E3 Saxo Classic a couple of weeks later. But in the stage races, he's more of a domestique. He's got the chance, though, to go for stage victory, and he is taking it, yanking it away from the rest of the breakaway with a tactically perfect move. And now he has to time trial to the finish line. Wellens does have the occasional victory in the time trial. Winner at the Tour de Pologne last year in an individual effort against the clock, and has won at the Baloise Belgium Tour and the Vuelta a Andalusia in time trial stages before. And finally, was the Belgian national time trial champion of last year, beating Alex Segar by 9 seconds. So is by no means a bad rider when it hits the flat. Probably one of the best in this leading 6 at the moment on the road. But Tim Wellens is taking the opportunity he has been given and stamping his authority on the stage. 28.4 kilometres to go for Tim Wellens, who must continue to press on if he wants stage honours. Finally, they're showing the rest of the breakaway, which is at 2 minutes and 27 seconds. That does include the likes of Wout van Aert and Julian Alaphilippe. Axel Laurence, of course, in this group too, as well as not Valentin Barry-Pantra, the former Dutch national champion of Pascal Encorn. Thibaut Nace has been reeled in as well. So the Jega, Nace and Madouat group has been reeled in by the rest of the remaining breakaway, because Van der Poel, Lund Andersen and Jake Stewart have been dropped and are back in the peloton now. So Van der Poel, who was feeling a little bit under the weather entering today, did get into the breakaway, but will not come away with a result of note. Good test of the legs, though, for the Dutchman. Meanwhile, his cyclocross rival, Wout van Aert, remains in the breakaway. In the end, though, Van Aert's looking at his teammate Victor Campenaerts to try and take stage victory for Visma Lease-A-Bike. EF remaining on the front of the peloton right now. But the gap was 6 minutes 5 to Wellens once EF began their pacing. It's now at 6 minutes 51, which I think says more about the tempo of Tim Wellens. But with Rodriguez well and truly dropped by the Belgian national champion, now at 1 minute 14 behind the lead of the race, this is playing back into the hands of EF and Uno X, who are seeing their work just about vindicated. Wellens, though, trying to lock in and get as aero as possible, riding on the hoods, but pressing down the watts to make sure that he holds off the chasers behind him, who will be ravenous for a stage victory. As will Wellens, though. Without a Grand Tour stage win for 5 years. And they're like buses for Tim Wellens. 2 at once in one Vuelta a España. Whereas last 2 victories at Grand Tour level in 2020, one of which he won in the King of the Mountains jersey, and he did have a spell in the polka dots at this Tour de France. But Wellens, who attacked over the top of the peak of today's stage, is pressing on down the descent. Splashes himself with water and then discards that to the side of the road. He's got another bottle in his bottle cage, but with the gap above a minute, the UAE Team Emirates team car now will have access to get to Tim Wellens on the road and provide him with tactical advice or bottles or any assistance that Wellens may need. A mechanical as well for Wellens. He could get that changed quickly, or quicker than usual, with the UAE Team Emirates team car alongside him. Rodriguez, though, riding well within himself and pacing his effort very well, trying to get back to the chasing group. He's got about 6 seconds to close to the group, including Warren Barguil, which as of now is starting to work okay together, but it might be a case of too little too late. With the descent to the line, it favours Tim Wellens riding solo. If it's a pedalling descent, slight advantage to the chasing group, but it will get steeper downhill shortly after a brief false flat section. And the gap to the peloton is 7 minutes, but the more the gap goes up, the more demoralised the chasing group will get, and the more likely they are to race for second place. Wellens, though, is absolutely burying himself to try and get this stage win. And the Belgian national champion is putting down a marker for UAE Team Emirates, who continue to dominate the headlines at this Tour de France. Pogacar in yellow, and Pogacar with many stage wins already in his pocket. And the UAE team car is up with them and instantly hands over some instructions as soon as they get there. But Wellens right now is in control of things at the moment and controlling how the race will go. Rodriguez alongside Lutsenko are making their way towards the chasing group Lutsenko attacking across and slightly dropping Rodriguez, who prefers to pace his own tempo. But Rodriguez has played a good race, admittedly not a winning one, but the way he wants to ride is for the general classification, and he's done that to great effectiveness so far in this particular stage. It's going to be a big win for Belgium today, you'd expect. But it was a big loss for Belgium in the previous stage, with Remco Evenepoel exiting the race and having to withdraw, stepping into the team car, the rider that was third in the general classification entering the day. But an update on his condition and how it played out in the race from Ilan van Wilder. He said, "We'll try to change our strategy in this tour to make the last week enjoyable, and hopefully we can take one more stage with our sprinter Tim Merlier. It would be nice, we will try." This moment is not nice for sure though. Remco Evenepoel dropped quite early on the Col de Tourmalet. Then we heard on the radio that Max Schachmann, Valentin Paripantra and me got the green light to do our own race, and Valentin was in the break, so he did a good job. At the beginning there was only Pascal Encorn to stay with Remco, and on the top of the Tourmalet I heard from my teammate Schachmann that he dropped out of the race. And Encorn is in the breakaway today, or was in the early move. At the moment he is in what I'm calling Group 3, now that Carlos Rodriguez is super close to the back of the second group on the road. So Encorn is going for his own opportunities, and so will Van Wilder seemingly in the final week of this tour. Meanwhile, Director Sportif of Quick-Step, Tom Steels, said it was the third day in a row that Remco Evenepoel didn't feel great. You hope for the best and hope it turns at that moment, but it didn't. He didn't have the legs to suffer. Then, I think it's wiser not to continue and just recover well. He still has some goals this year. Maybe if he continues in the condition he had, then maybe the rest of the season is lost. He was very disappointed that he had to leave the tour. He was world champion on the road and in the time trial. That's his next goal that he has to aim for, I think. You have to call it in time. You feel something's wrong, he's not himself. This is the third day in a row that he doesn't feel great. You have to be careful to not go over the limit and lose months instead of just days. Let's hope he can recover quickly and retake training in a week or two. Valentin Paripantra today got a free roll. He was there and super strong today on the Perisord, which was really good. And they've got Pascal Encorn in the move today, so Quick-Step are on the lookout for stage hunting now, so keep an eye on them for the rest of this Tour de France. They've missed out on the stage win today, which looks like it's going the way of Tim Wellens. But Rodriguez and Lutsenko have joined up to make a 7-rider chase. With more riders, there's more capability to chase Wellens down, but there's a higher likelihood of breakaway dynamics ensuing and more dysfunction. But a group including Van Aert and Romeo are 2 minutes behind and are more than gone. Their task will be to close in, if you're Ivan Romeo certainly, on the chasing group and see if you can pick up some pieces and a podium result rather than a stage win that will be going the way of Tim Wellens in 17 kilometres time, barring incident or accident. I don't want to jinx it for him, because it's been an inspired ride from Wellens, tactically played very well. But Wellens for now is in control of things. Slow-mo shots of Wellens in the pain cave right now. But UAE Team Emirates are on their way to another stage win. Quinn Simmons, meanwhile, attacks the second group, which are now, I think, racing for second position. Alexander Vlasov is going to try and follow it and bridge the gap to the American national champion. But as of now, Simmons has got himself a gap and is away on his own. Campenaerts did have a try earlier on. This time, a rider with a little bit more wattage in the bank was able to give it a try. And at the moment, he is succeeding. Campenaerts and Lutsenko clearly dropped. Michael Storer trying to chase across. Meanwhile, Vlasov and Carlos Rodriguez are looking to follow in the wheels, bridge that gap. Bardi and Campenaerts, though, are the latest riders to try and get across to Quinn Simmons. Rodriguez, Vlasov and Lutsenko seeming like they're doing so, with Storer leading the way for those guys. But again, this is just attack after attack after attack, and it will play into the hands of the likes of Wout van Aert, who is behind with Ivan Romeo and has broken away from the Jordan Jada group to go for his own result. And this is something that Wellens will be rubbing his hands with glee with. As Van Aert has written "Happy Birthday Jerome" on the back of his race number. Wellens grabs a bottle of cold water, lobs it over his back, and the UAE team car have strategically given that to him. It didn't have the bottle top on, which was clearly not meant for drinking. It was meant for cooling the rider down. But Wellens is on his way to take UAE Team Emirates' 5th stage win from 15 stages. They've won 33% of the stages that they've entered at this Tour de France. If the Belgian can bring it home. And with 1 minute and 31 on the chase group and the team car with him for a potential mechanical, it is well and truly on. The Peloton note at 7 minutes and 19 seconds show that Tim Wellens has really picked up the pace since attacking over the top of the final climb of the day. He's got a couple more kilometres of descent and false flat descent before a completely flat run to the line in Carcassonne. Meanwhile, it's the first we're seeing of Wout van Aert and Ivan Romeo. They've not got a big gap on the rest of the breakaway behind them. But pressing on down the descent is Uno X and EF Education Easy Post. And they're not going for stage honours, they're just making sure that Rodriguez, who is in Group 2 at 22 minutes and 57 seconds down, is not going to overtake any of their GC leaders. That is Ben Healy, sat 9th for EF Education Easy Post, and Tobias Harlan Johannesson sat 8th for Uno X. But there were a couple of moves from GC favourites, the likes of Oscar Onley slipping into the breakaway early on. Florian Lipovitz made a little bit more of a obvious move, attacking, which in the end was pulled back again. But Rodriguez is the only rider that has kicked on from the top 10 after getting into the breakaway, and will feel vindicated by the end of today. Was involved in the breakaway in yesterday's stage, but Rodriguez looks to have got his reward for getting into today's move. 10.5 kilometres remaining. 1 minute 40 for Tim Wellens. This looks in the bag for the UAE Team Emirates Domestique. And the flat section will start in around 2 kilometres time for Tim Wellens, who just has to bring this one home. The UAE Team Emirates XRG man racing under the Belgian national champions jersey, and for once I am semi-happy that a national champion on UAE is winning a stage, because it's very common for UAE Team Emirates to completely butcher the national champions jerseys. The Belgian Federation have clearly had a word though, and I'm glad that they did, because this jersey is about to win a Tour de France stage, and if it was just a small little Belgian flag on a white jersey of UAE Team Emirates, like we've seen with the German flag on Intermarché 1T for Georg Zimmermann, it would have taken away from this victory quite a lot, in my opinion. Van Aert and Romeo continue to push on, but it looks futile right now because Pascal Incorn is joining in the chase with Volgren of EF Education Easy Post. Final kilometre of descent though for Wellens before he will begin the time trial to the line. And his head is really bobbing now. He's got 1 minute and 40 remaining in the stage, or 1 minute 40 should I say, to the rest of the breakaway group, and it's got 8.5 kilometres to hold the advantage. And although it is well over 90 seconds on the road, it is much more than that in terms of distance. Wellens around 1.5 kilometres clear of these guys in the second group, because of this downhill portion, which will end soon. But Wellens just has to stay on his bike and ensure that it doesn't have any mechanical difficulties to cross the line solo. We've seen him do it at the Belgian National Championships this year, and it's a copy and paste ride. That year he held off the likes of Remco Evenepoel and Jasper Philipsen. This year it will be Victor Campenaerts. That month he held off the likes of Remco Evenepoel and Jasper Philipsen. This month he'll be holding off Victor Campenaerts, Quinn Simmons, Michael Storer, Bargi, Lutsenko, Vlasov, Van Aert. Van der Poel was in this breakaway as well. It was such an elite group, but in the end, the rider with the best tactics has gone and won the stage, and it's Tim Wellens who left it to one attack, but the one attack was the one. Carlos Rodriguez knows that he's moving up to 9th in the general classification, so is pressing on in the breakaway. But the group of Van Aert are going to be closing in because it's a climber against Van Aert and Romeo, who are two flat trucks. The rest of the breakaway know this though, and are letting Carlos Rodriguez ride what is now going to be a 7.5 kilometre time trial to the finish line. Which means the remaining 6 will sprint it out for second place in the stage, because Tim Wellens has this wrapped up. It's not been a bad July, let's say, for UAE Team Emirates XRG. Fresh out of the national championships, of which they won Portugal, Belgium, and the time trial championships of Austria and Portugal as well. Rafał Majka winning the Polish nationals as well for UAE Team Emirates. But in July, so far, across the Tour of Austria and the Tour de France, they have racked up stage win after stage win. Del Toro winning the GC of the Tour of Austria, and UAE going 4 for 4, winning all 4 road stages at the Tour of Austria, as well as 4 stages already at the Tour de France, which will become 5 shortly as Quinn Simmons tries another move. Storer attempting to shut it down, but I think riders are starting to look over their shoulder and see Van Aert and Romeo bridging this across. Victor Campenaerts sat at the back of the group, and it's Barguil who hands over to Michael Storer to try and chase down Quinn Simmons in the American National Champions jersey. Campenaerts electing to go at his own tempo and is reeling the rest of his breakaway counterparts back. Meanwhile, Van Aert and Romeo are taking turns. Most of the time we've seen Van Aert at the front, but Ivan Romeo in the Spanish National Champions jersey of Movistar is taking a couple of pulls at the front. But Campenaerts glances across at the camera motorbike. Looks like he has still more in the tank. But right now, Quinn Simmons is heading away with second place. The camera pans back, and soon it will get to Van Aert and Ivan Romeo, who are trying their best to make their way across. But while Van Aert and Ivan Romeo are being closely followed by the chasing group, the chasing pack, that includes Jordan Jaeger, Ben O'Connor, Guillaume Martin, Valentin Madouas, Harold Tejada, Pascal Encorn, Paulus Alaphilippe, Laurence, Stuyven, Leknesund, Valgren and Nath. Couple of good sprinters in there. But a fist pump from Wellens, who looks over at the camera. He knows what he's about to do. Complete his hat-trick of Grand Tour stage winners' medals. And complete it by doing so at the biggest Grand Tour of the lot. Warren Barguil attacks. Following in the wheel is Carlos Rodriguez. Michael Storer also trying to follow. Victor Campenaerts just letting it all happen. Sat second to last wheel. Just in front of Alex Vlasov. But Tim Wellens has 3 kilometres to hold out. And will have time to soak it up and celebrate a 5th stage win for UAE Team Emirates XRG at this Tour de France. And it's a fantastic advert for all the sponsors right now who are getting more than their money's worth of investment in the team. Through Tim Wellens and Tadej Pogacar, it's the first non-Pogacar stage win for UAE Team Emirates at this year's Tour. But Wellens, out of contract with UAE at the end of this year, might throw himself back into the negotiation room with this victory. But UAE Team Emirates very much considered a one-rider team at this Tour de France. Will be taking a victory with the rider that they are not solely putting the eggs in the basket for. The last non-Pogacar stage win, of course, for UAE Team Emirates came at stage 1 of the 2023 Tour with Adam Yates. Over 2 years later, they look like they're going to take another stage win with a rider other than Tadej Pogacar, as Victor Campenaerts makes his move and nobody reacts initially. Lutsenko, the first rider to blink to try and get across to Victor Campenaerts. A rider who was fairly obviously, I think, showing his pretend fatigue at the back of the breakaway. Deliberately leaving a gap in the wheel so that he could attack across, but Tim Wellens turns right and will head into the city of Carcassonne. He's got 1 kilometre remaining. Underneath the Flamme Rouge goes Tim Wellens. And he is pumped by this stage victory that he is about to claim. By the looks of things, it might be a Belgian 1-2 as things stand, because Victor Campenaerts has a clear bit of daylight between himself and the rest of the breakaway. But Tim Wellens already high-fiving the fans with 800 metres remaining. It's another mark on this Tour de France from UAE Team Emirates, who are constantly writing new chapters at this race. They have the yellow jersey, but it's the rider in black, red and yellow who will take stage honours. Meanwhile, Victor Campenaerts getting aero and watching his effort. He is a rider that can pace it to the line, and I think he's got second place sewn up. But a rider who has had first place sewn up for many kilometres now is Tim Wellens. Another pump of that right fist that we've seen consistently for the past couple of kilometres. But it's one attack that Wellens did, and in the end, it was more than powerful enough to distance his rivals. Up comes Wellens, completes the hat-trick. 2 stage wins at the Giro, 2 stage wins at the Vuelta, and he has broken his duck at the Tour. Wellens takes the stage win then. Victor Campenaerts into the final kilometre now. Looks on his way to second position. But the day will be about Tim Wellens. Winner of stage 15 for UAE Team Emirates. Campenaerts is away, and I don't think he will be caught. The camera will pan onto the final straight soon because Victor Campenaerts makes the gradual left turn. Meanwhile, the rest of the breakaway have all come together, so it's going to be a sprint royale for third position. Campenaerts has 500 metres of his effort left, but it's the 34-year-old Tim Wellens that will be the story of the day. Carlos Rodriguez, though, will have to try and time trial his way to the finish as attacks get launched. It looks like Thibaut Nace going for it for a little trek. Opening up his sprint incredibly early. It's Jasper Stuyven actually, maybe leading out for Thibaut Nace. But Campenaerts has built up enough of an advantage to cross the line in second. Meanwhile, the battle for third is led at the moment by Jasper Stuyven, who hands over to Wout van Aert, who is sprinting for the line and is out-sprinted just by Julian Alaphilippe, who celebrates across the line. Does he know? Does Julian Alaphilippe know that he's third? I'm hoping that he does know that he's third. But Alaphilippe, Alaphilippe, who was on the deck earlier in the stage, I don't think knows that Tim Wellens and Victor Campenaerts have gone up the road. We'll have to hear from Alaphilippe to see whether he's actually believed that he won that stage, or whether he was just pumped with the fact he out-sprinted Wout van Aert. But no sprint necessary for Tim Wellens, who had time to raise his arms and soak it all up, and win UAE Team Emirates' 5th stage of the Tour de France. A third of the stage wins at this tour have gone to one team. And with mountains coming up in the third week, you expect Tadej Pogacar to sweep up some more. for his team. Campenaerts will look back on this and probably be chuffed with his second place. Meanwhile, Alaphilippe, Van Aert and Axel Laurent sprinted it out for third, and in the end, Alaphilippe, just about on the bike throw, got there. And then Alaphilippe, the arms go up. I didn't see Victor Campenaerts actually in shot there. But I'm not sure whether that third group on the road knew. Campenaerts was well past the photographers, past the line, but Alaphilippe celebrating third. You've got to hope that he's just pumped with the fact that he's out-sprinted Van Aert and Laurent. But there we are. We're about to get some team radio from UAE Team Emirates XRG for this Tim Wellens victory. Tadej saying, oh no, this looks like a replay. Oh no, Pogacar saying, how is Tim? Is he looking fabulous or not? And they say he's looking perfect in his Belgian champions jersey. And it was a perfectly timed move over the top of the final climb, distancing the rest of his breakaway counterparts and having enough in the tank to hold the rest of the breakaway off with plenty of Group 2 dynamics from the likes of Quinn Simmons and Michael Storer, who will go longer without a Tour de France stage victory, after coming close, of course, on stage 10 and losing out to Ben Healy. But Ben Healy's EF team are pacing this one in for the Peloton. This is big in the lower section of the general classification, the top 10 battle. Carlos Rodriguez will not be troubling the top 5, but the likes of Ben Healy and Tobias Harlan Johannesson were concerned. Mathieu van der Poel and Tobias Lund Andersen are away, just ahead of the Peloton. Sorry, it's not van der Poel and Lund Andersen, it's I think it's Merisa and Vandenbroek, because Van der Poel and Lund Andersen were caught. It does look like Merisa and Vandenbroek, who are trying their best to hold off the Peloton. Vandenbroek sat in the wheel of Xandra Merisa and will be about to launch his sprint with 200 metres remaining for them. Ben Healy, though, sat second wheel behind an Uno X rider. But Abrahamsen is leading the Peloton in. Healy overtakes for a final sprint to the line. Vandenbroek lets Xandra Merisa finish ahead. But Healy crosses the line first in the Peloton. And I will figure out where that puts him in the general classification ahead of the next stream. Of course, a rest day coming up now, and a brief day to reflect on the second week of racing that we've seen. And what a week of racing it's been. But more to come in the third week. More mountains. The final stage in Paris that is looking a little bit different to normal. But all of that is to come. Anyway, I will leave you and I will get the reaction from today's stage to pile in to Tuesday's stream. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.